I'm joined here at the Schottenstein Center by men's basketball head coach Jake Diebler. Jake, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for taking some time out to spend with me here as we get ready for the start of the season.
100%. And the season starts here in 5 days. First game against IU Indy here at the Schottenstein Center Monday night. We've already got to see your guys play live twice in 2 scrimmages, one against Tennessee, one against Ohio University. And I know you can't put too much stock in the scrimmages, but what did you see out of your guys that you liked?
Yeah, I think going into those scrimmages, we wanted to see if the stuff that we've been focusing on would translate, right, against someone else. When you're going against yourself day after day after day, you start to know the actions before they happen. So there's this element of surprise that you don't get to see and prepare for. So playing with pace, sharing the ball, rebounding, defensive connection, those were things we wanted to see translate and feel really good about how they did translate and really how we improved from Tennessee to the Ohio exhibition.
And how do you think you improved?
Well, I think, for us, our offensive chemistry has been ahead of our defensive chemistry. And that was a big thing coming out of the Tennessee scrimmage. Our guys are really close. We've been intentional about building that chemistry. A lot has happened organically. They've really bought into sharing the ball and playing at a great pace, playing off of each other. Defensively, when you have to identify coverages and communication is so critical, and being able to anticipate, that's just been a little bit behind of what our offensive chemistry was. We put a huge focus on that in the last 2 weeks, and we're seeing major development in that space.
Yeah, and this is your second full season as head coach. Last year didn't necessarily go the way you guys wanted it to go. The name of the season was kind of close losses. You guys had 11 losses by 4 or less points. And what experiences do you think you had that you take into this year from those close losses that you learned?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack in what is really typical Big Ten basketball. You're going to be in a lot of close games. So for us, I think in those moments you see the value of experience. So when we went to put this roster together, we knew we needed to add experience, especially in the front court. We were able to do that. We also practice end-of-game situations, shooting drills when you're really fatigued, execution, and creating chaos and adversity in practice and having to execute. So we've simulated those situations really since we got together in June and built that out and practiced those. So I think we're prepared to perform well in those situations, and our collective experience should help us. And then, for me personally, typically in your first year of coaching, you don't have that many games like that. And Ohio State basketball's been around 126 seasons, and first time ever we had 5 straight games decided by 1 possession or less. So that experience is super valuable. Being able to go back and reflect on maybe things we did well, things we could have done better in those moments this offseason was important for me personally. And we've implemented some changes and some things to help us perform at a high level. The biggest thing you want to do as a coach is put your team in a position to be successful. Get the ball in one of your best players' hands, create an advantage for them, and then sometimes it just comes down to making and missing shots. And I think we're equipped, and we'll be prepared to make more than we miss in those settings, and that's really what Big Ten basketball is all about.
Yeah, and you talked about the game management aspect of it, but it was also your first full season at the helm recruiting-wise, and I know you did a lot of recruiting as an assistant here, but how did you manage recruiting in your first full season, and how did it kind of shake out in your opinion?
Well, sliding over to the head coach's seat, I know how valuable recruiting is to a program, and I wanted to continue to be hands-on and boots on the ground in the recruiting space, even as a head coach. And the thing that we've talked a lot about as a staff, as we build our chemistry together, is collaboration. And we're doing that at a really high level right now. And I think, fit is everything. Certainly we wanted to bring in and kind of raise our collective basketball IQ. Experience helps with that. We wanted to raise our overall skill level. I feel like we did that. And, getting guys who are bought in and playing together and playing for Ohio State was important for us too. We feel like we were able to do that at a high level as we put together this roster for the season.
And you bring in 4 new players out of the transfer portal. Do you feel like that full season you kind of got to gauge the team and gauge what you want to do and bring in your guys more so than maybe 2024 when you just had a few games? Obviously, you were still on the roster, but as head coach, just do you think that was the case?
I think as we put last year's team together, it was rushed. We were in a space where I was hiring a staff and putting together a roster, and all the things that go into NIL and involvement in that. So this year, having almost our entire staff back, really putting our focus on retention first, and then building out from there. I feel like it wasn't as rushed. We were able to be more calculated, and I think we feel great as a staff about this roster that we put together. We feel like it fits really well together, and we had more time to evaluate it. There were just a lot of factors that went into it, but springtime's crazy. Roster management is so critical, and you're forced to make decisions in a really short time that will impact your season for the entire year. There are no free agency periods. There's no trades like professional sports. You got to make these quick, calculated decisions that are going to last you the whole year, and it's challenging. We learned a lot of lessons, I think, from that first spring, and really excited about how it shaped up this year.
And you mentioned it's a crazy time in the spring, and this summer, kind of more so than ever in college athletics with the House bill passing in June. What is it like to be a coach in this NIL era where there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of just unknown?
Yeah, I think first off, NIL gets a bad rep. I think there's a lot of good that's coming from it, and it was overdue. I mean, players, deserve to be compensated. The biggest challenge right now that from my seat is the unknown. The fact that we've had this kind of evolving landscape and rules keep changing. It's very hard to plan. It's very hard to plan if you don't know exactly what next year will look like. So that's the hardest part. For us, it's always going to be about the people and bringing in the right people. We've got to have talented players. There's no question about it. But fit is really important for us, and so that won't change regardless of how these new rules play out. But it's fascinating because even with signing day approaching, we still don't know exactly what next year's kind of landscape will look like, and that's how many industries, essentially businesses, right, operate like that. That makes the space we're in unique, but it's just that, it's unique. You gotta find a way. You gotta find a way to stay cutting edge. You gotta find a way to keep, pushing to get Ohio State basketball back to where I think it belongs.
Yeah, and just switching gears a little bit, you talked about playing with pace, and that's something you've stressed since, you first got hired here. Last season, there were times where you guys played with the pace that you said you wanted to. There were also times where you didn't. What makes you believe that this group can play at that tempo that you would like this year?
Yeah, when you reflect back on last year's team, we played the fastest Ohio State had played in almost a decade. I think we averaged the most points Ohio State basketball has averaged since the early 90s. So there were some things that we did well, but even last year, the amount of possessions, the assist rate, there were some things I felt like we needed to get better at. So when we went to assembling this roster, we wanted to play more of a true 5-out. Got to have multiple guys on the floor that can shoot to be able to do that. And we put a premium on early strikes, creating an advantage early in possessions. And I think one of the things that people maybe misinterpret when you say pace, it's immediately like, oh, you have to run fast. Yes, there's an element of that. But I think what allows really good offenses to play fast is when you can have just a group of high IQ players together at the same time who have worked hard to build the chemistry so they're reacting off of each other. Last year, we had to call more sets. That's what fit our team. We ended up having a top 30, top offense efficiency rating. This year, I don't think we have to call as many sets. We can give guys a little bit more freedom within our system to read and react off each other and try to create what we like to say, kind of a domino effect within a possession earlier in the clock versus manufacturing it by calling set plays all the time.
Yeah, do you think bringing in big men like Christoph Tilley and Brandon Dole kind of helps you create that 5-out offense that you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just those two, Devon's gotten better. His development's been really huge, And Amari Bynum is a highly skilled, high basketball IQ player as well. And shifting Devin, who again has a high basketball IQ, to the perimeter more, gives us more size. It allows us to play bigger instead of being 6'6", 6'8" in the front court. We can be 6'6", 6'8", and 7 feet. And so I think that was critical, assembling the roster, getting bigger. But, for us, guys who can read the game and feed off of each other, create for each other, and understand kind of spacing schemes and principles, cutting principles, has been really beneficial for us so far.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about retention too. You bring back Bruce Thorne, John Mobley Jr., Devin Royal, and that's rare, these days in college basketball for 3 guys to come back and kind of, stick it out. And what do you think that speaks to your program and what you're trying to do that all those guys came back this year?
I think the success we had in retention, certainly we're bringing our 3 best players back, but then also you look at guys who were developmental guys for us last year who are now stepping into bigger opportunities. I think it says a lot about the culture we were able to build, the foundation we were able to lay, in year one. Certainly the end result was not what we wanted, but there were some really good things that came from last season. So much so that those guys believe in what we're doing and want to be here to help get this program to the next level. And, I think those close games we mentioned before, it was great for me. It was great for those guys too. Great experience for those guys to go through. And a lot of those guys, as either a freshman in John Mobley's case or, a sophomore in Devin Royal's case who didn't play a lot as a freshman, like those guys were in end-of-game situations, sometimes with the ball in their hands to make a decision. And they hadn't done that before at the college level. So that experience has been good for all of us. And we wanted to build this program around those guys and retention, and that's going to be a philosophy for us, I think, every offseason moving forward. Yeah,
and you mentioned that, you have developmental guys coming back too. And I believe it was in media day, you said you guys are deeper this year. And bench scoring was kind of an issue last year. What makes you think you guys are deeper? Is it that experience that you were talking about?
Yeah, last year we really struggled, especially in the last probably 4 weeks of the season. We struggled to get consistent production from our bench. And it was a major issue when you're going into games, your bench is getting outscored by 10, 15, sometimes even more points. So, for us, when we build out this roster, we wanted to be able to play more guys. I think the pace we're going to play at warrants that, certainly. But we got to be able to have some offensive pop off the bench as well. We have multiple guys who are capable of playmaking, guys who are capable of making shots, and Taysom Chapman, Matthew Grudicic, I think Avad has gotten, he keeps getting better and better right before our eyes. Had a great summer and great fall. So, those guys are going to be really productive. The emergence of Amari Bynum is going to play a major factor in that as well. We have, high level belief in him. So I do think our depth, is significantly better. A healthy Colin White can be a great thing for Ohio State basketball. So there's a lot of options, for us when we look down and say, okay, how can we get scoring? How can we inject some energy into the game? I feel like we've got a lot of options.
Yeah, and Bruce comes back for his 4th year, all 4 years as a Buckeye. What do you think his legacy will be at Ohio State after he leaves?
Well, I think the great part is he's got a chance to kind of write his own ending. Part of his legacy is loyalty. Part of his legacy is weathering, some turmoil. And, his character, right, has been revealed. He's values Ohio State, what it means to be a Buckeye, what it means to get his degree from Ohio State. And now he's got a chance, and we all do have a chance to kind of help him write, the final chapter. And I think that's really exciting because he's a guy who embodies, what you want your program to be about. Tough, selfless, every rep guy that, is guys like that, deserve kind of an opportunity, I think, to end it. Have a lot to say on how it ends, and he certainly will for us.
Yeah. And last thing I got for you, you've done a lot of fan outreach this year. It started with the Instagram videos where you were breaking down film. You've had 2 open practices. Why did you do that? And kind of what is your message for Buckeye fans this year who want to see this team get back into the NCAA tournament so bad?
Yeah, well, I think first off, I believe in transparency. And, as the landscape changes, I think coaches got to change with it. And one thing I know about Buckeye Nation is they they connect with players, and it's harder to connect with players than it was 5 to 10 years ago. So trying to create ways for them to connect with new guys is important. I think they have a connection with the Bruce Thornton and John Mobley and Devin Royal, but we've brought some guys in who are going to be really impactful for us. So I felt like it was important to give some insight into who those guys are, what we're expecting from them, and provide some transparency, into our program, because of we need our fans to step up and help us create a home court advantage this year, to help us, be a tough place to play in what is a really tough league to play in. And the energy, the atmosphere, all that stuff plays a factor. When we talked about how many close games, 1 possession here, 2 possessions there, a little bit more energy, a little bit more passion, a little bit more, I think just life in our arena can make a difference. We've seen it. We've traveled in some other arenas and seen how impactful it can be. And there were times last year it was really impactful, no question. So I think we're trying to do everything we can to just keep building upon that. And we got a job to do. We know that. I think our style we're going to play is going to be fun and entertaining, and people are going to enjoy it. But the way our schedule shapes up, we've got some opportunity for some big-time home games, as the season progresses. And we need help as the season starts. But, I think also as this season goes along and we get some momentum, excited to see this place fill up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. That's all we have for you today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you.